The courtroom felt heavy that Tuesday morning. Sarah Mitchell sat at the defendant's table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, trying to keep her composure. After 12 years of marriage, Daniel had filed for divorce. The proceedings had been bitter, filled with accusations and hurt feelings that cut deeper than any legal document could express. Sarah was 41, a woman who had dedicated her life to her family. She had soft eyes that once sparkled with hope, now shadowed by sleepless nights and endless worry. Her daughter, Emma, was only 7 years old, too young to fully understand why Daddy didn't live at home anymore, but old enough to feel the tension that crackled through every exchange. Between her parents, Judge Margaret Harrison presided over the case with the wisdom of someone who had seen countless families torn apart. She was in her late 50s, with kind eyes that had witnessed both the best and worst of human nature. She handled each case with careful attention, knowing that her decisions would ripple through lives for years to come. Daniel sat across the aisle with his attorney, a sharp-dressed man who seemed to view the proceedings as just another case to win. Daniel had changed over the past year. The man Sarah had fallen in love with, the one who brought her coffee in bed and danced with her in the kitchen, had become someone cold and distant. She later discovered he had been having an affair with a colleague from his law firm. Younger woman named Rebecca, who didn't know about the promises Daniel had made or the family he was leaving behind. The morning testimony had been routine. Financial statements, custody arrangements, the division of property acquired during their marriage. Sarah answered each question honestly, even when the truth hurt. She talked about the house they had bought together, the vacations they had saved for, the dreams they had shared. Then came the moment that would change everything. Judge Harrison looked down at the custody petition. I understand there's a request for Emma to provide testimony regarding her preferences. Sarah's attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor. Emma has asked to speak to the court. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Children testifying in divorce proceedings was always difficult, something judges try to avoid when possible. But Emma had been insistent. The bailiff brought Emma into the courtroom. She looked so small standing there in her favorite blue dress, the one Sarah had ironed that morning with trembling hands. Emma's hair was pulled back into neat braids, and she clutched a tablet computer against her chest. Judge Harrison smiled gently at the child. Hello, Emma. You don't need to be nervous. Would you like to tell me something? Emma nodded, her voice clear despite the butterflies that must have been dancing in her stomach. Yes, Your Honor. May I show you something that MOM doesn't know about? Sarah felt her heart clench. What could Emma possibly have that she didn't know about? The judge nodded kindly. Of course, sweetheart. Emma walked forward and handed the tablet to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. Emma's small fingers worked the screen, setting up a video file. I was playing with Dad's phone a few months ago, Emma explained, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom. I was trying to play my game, but I accidentally opened his messages. I saw things that made me sad, so I used his tablet to record a video. I wanted to understand why Daddy was being mean to Mommy. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. She hadn't known. She had been so focused on protecting Emma from the ugliness of the divorce that she hadn't realized her daughter was already aware of how bad things had become. Judge Harrison's expression remained neutral as she pressed play on the video. The courtroom fell into complete silence. The video showed Daniel in his home office, the one he'd moved to after leaving the family home. The audio was clear. He was on a video call with Rebecca, and the conversation was damning. He spoke about hiding assets, transferring money to offshore accounts Sarah didn't know about. He laughed about misleading the court regarding his income. He talked about his strategy to paint Sarah as an unfit mother, using lies and manipulation to gain full custody so he wouldn't have to pay child support. But worst of all was what he said about Emma herself. The kids just leverage. Daniel's voice came through the tablet speakers. I don't really want full custody. Too much work. But if I threaten it, Sarah will settle for less money. She'll do anything to keep Emma. Once this is over and I get what I want, Rebecca and I can start fresh. Maybe have a family of our own, one that isn't so complicated. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Emma, who stood bravely before the judge, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her chin held high. This little girl who still believed in fairy tales and happy endings had heard her father dismiss her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. The video continued. Daniel discussed falsifying documents, poaching witnesses, and having Rebecca create false evidence of Sarah's supposed instability. It was a calculated plan to destroy Sarah's life and reputation, all so he could walk away with more money and fewer obligations. When the video finally ended, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Harrison's expression had transformed from neutral professionalism to barely contained anger. She looked at Daniel, who had gone pale, then at his attorney, who was frantically whispering to his client. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, her voice cold and precise, "I am immediately ordering a full forensic audit of all your financial statements and holdings. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges, including perjury, fraud, and obstruction of justice." She turned to Daniel's attorney. "Counselor, I suggest you consider very carefully your own liability in this matter." Then Judge Harrison's expression softened as she looked at Emma. "Sweetheart, what you did was very brave. Thank you for bringing this to the court's attention. You can go sit with your mother now." Emma ran to Sarah, who wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her tight. They both cried, Sarah from shock and relief and heartbreak, Emma from the weight of carrying such a terrible secret for months. The judge addressed the courtroom. "This divorce proceeding is suspended pending investigation. Mr. Mitchell, you were ordered to have no contact with a minor child except through supervised visitation arranged by the court. Mrs. Mitchell will have temporary full custody." We are adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo with finality. The aftermath unfolded slowly. Like a storm gradually clearing, the forensic audit revealed exactly what Emma's video had suggested. Daniel had hidden nearly $300,000 in various accounts. He had lied about his income, his assets, and his intentions. The district attorney filed multiple charges, and Daniel's law firm fired him immediately to avoid their own legal complications. Rebecca, who had been unaware of the extent of Daniel's deception, ended their relationship and cooperated with investigators. But the real story wasn't about the money or the legal consequences. It was about what happened after. Sarah and Emma moved to a smaller house, one they could actually afford. Sarah went back to school to finish her nursing degree, something she had put aside when she got married. It was hard work, balancing classes, and parenting and healing from betrayal. But she discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. Emma went to therapy to help process what she'd learned about her father. Dr. Chun, her counselor, was patient and kind, helping Emma understand that adults sometimes make terrible choices, but those choices weren't her fault. Slowly, Emma learned to smile again, to trust again, to be a child again. Sarah never badmouthed Daniel to Emma, even after everything. She knew her daughter needed to form her own understanding of who her father was. When Emma asked why Daddy had said those things, Sarah held her close and said, "Sometimes people lose their way. Sometimes they hurt the people who love them. But that doesn't mean we have to become bitter. We can choose kindness even when others choose cruelty." Daniel served 8 months in jail and was disbarred. When he was released, he wrote a letter to Emma not asking for forgiveness, but apologizing for failing her as a father. Emma kept the letter in her drawer, but didn't respond. She wasn't ready, and Sarah respected that. 2 years later, Sarah graduated with her nursing degree. Emma, now 9, sat in the front row at the ceremony, cheering louder than anyone when her mother's name was called. They celebrated with ice cream and a movie, just the two of them. Like they had done so many times before, Sarah found work at a children's hospital, where her empathy and understanding made her particularly good with young patients going through difficult times. She never remarried, though she dated occasionally. She had learned that wholeness didn't require another person to complete her. She was already complete on her own. Emma grew into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman. The experience had shaped her, certainly, but it hadn't broken her. She learned early that courage sometimes means speaking truth even when it's terrifying, that loyalty matters more than blood, and that real love requires sacrifice and showing up, day after day. Years later, when Emma was in college studying family law, she wrote an essay about that day in court. She described the fear she felt, the weight of the tablet in her hands, the sound of her father's voice dismissing her existence. But she also wrote about her mother's strength, Judge Harrison's compassion, and the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is reveal the truth, no matter how painful. The essay ended with these words: "My mother taught me that betrayal doesn't have to define you. How you respond to it with grace, with dignity, with determination to build something better, that's what matters. My father's choices hurt us, but they also showed us who we really are, and we are stronger than we ever knew." Sarah kept a copy of that essay on her refrigerator for years. On quiet evenings, when Emma came home from school to visit, they would sit together on the porch of their small house. They would talk about life and love and the complicated nature of forgiveness. They would remember that day in court not as the day their family fell apart, but as the day they discovered their own resilience. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked Emma once. "Showing that video? Carrying that weight?" Emma thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, because it was the truth, and the truth, even when it hurts, is better than living a lie." Sarah pulled her daughter close, grateful beyond words for this brave, wise soul who had become her greatest teacher. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes it comes in the courage of a 7-year-old girl who loved her mother enough to speak truth to power. Sometimes it comes in the slow, steady work of rebuilding her life from broken pieces, and sometimes in the quiet moments between mother and daughter. It comes in the simple acknowledgement that they survived, they healed, and they built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal that, Sarah knew, was the greatest victory of all.